Good afternoon. It is now 6:30. Once you have quorum on camera, which you do now, you may proceed with the meeting.
Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth. Could I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order, please? Deputy Mayor Coghlan, Councillor Cabral, at the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of November 2nd, 2022, come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? That is carried. This evening, our final meeting. I'm not wearing the chain of office as it is presently being engraved, so that's why I'm not wearing it tonight. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interests, Council? Seeing none, we will proceed. There are no deputations, so we move to question period, which is item 4. Questions can be submitted up to noon in writing or to make a request to present the question live pertaining to topics that are on the agenda. Further details of that are on the agenda. Clerk Ainsworth, have there been any submissions received?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. There have been no submissions received by the deadline.
Okay, I understand there was a subsequent question pertaining to Homer Barrett Park that we will be able to address once we get to that topic. Moving on to 5.1 minutes of council. Can I have a mover and seconder to approve the minutes of council? Councillor Ma Chapman, Councillor Moore. That the minutes of council listed herein be approved as presented. Any question with respect to these minutes? These are the minutes of the special meeting of council September 26, 2022, and the regular meeting of council October 5th, 2022. All those in favor? That is carried. 5.2 is the minutes of boards, committees, and organizations. Can I have a mover and seconder to approve these minutes? Councillor Moore and Deputy Mayor Coghlan. Any questions with respect to these? The minutes listed herein be approved as presented, that being the minutes of the Springwater Public Library Board meeting of June 21, 2022, the Public Library Board meeting of September 20, 2022, and the Cultural Advisory Committee meeting of June 7th, 2022. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to action reports 6.1. Can I have a mover and seconder to get these on the floor, please? Councillor Cabral, Deputy Mayor Coghlan. We will be having questions with respect to 6.4 Homer Barrett Park. Any other questions or desire to pull 6.2 through 6.4? Councillor Cabral.
Mayor Allen, seeing as we have a question for 6.4, I'd like to pull it. I have some items I'd like to discuss before it moves forward.
Okay. Any other questions, comments with respect to 6.2 or 6.3? All right, then we will move that the action reports 6.2 and 6.3 group benefits renewal and the 2022 year-end holiday office closure. The recommendation contained therein be approved as presented, with the exception of 6.4, which will be dealt with separately. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving to 6.4, Councillor Cabral, you'll move to get it on the floor. Seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Coghlan. Go ahead, Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I did reach out to staff on this in respect of the information that was being provided. And I did look to see if I could find the RFP for it, but it had already been taken off site. I had some concerns from residents with respect to the potential for noise level increases at the park. My understanding is that the location where the park is and the equipment is going to be replaced, and through the grant, which is wonderful. That's a great idea. However, there is concern about the noise level, and there was one particular item. It's a feature that had raised some concern with the residents, and I just wanted to find out from staff I was kind of looking to see if there might be an alternative to that feature. The feature I'm speaking of is a lack of a better term, a couple of giant bongo drums that would be part and partial to the playground. The playground where it's currently situated is right behind residences whose backyards are immediately adjacent to the fence there. In some cases from the swing section, probably less than 50 feet. From the playground area, it could be 100 feet, but there's no foliage. There's really nothing to prevent the sound from carrying. And as you know, with the splash park there, the residents have incurred additional levels of noise in the area. I'm just very concerned that providing an additional item at the playground, such as musical or steel bongos, however you want to call them, I think that might be something that might just present difficulty between those using the playground and the adjacent folks that are trying to enjoy, their backyards through the daytime, certainly on the weekends too. And that's also when the playground is most active. So I would really like to see no additional noise come from the playground, and maybe some other feature that could replace the bongos that could still provide some useful sensory capabilities for the children. Maybe something of a tactile nature that doesn't involve noise, but certainly involves them maybe swinging or climbing a little bit more. So that's my main concern, Mayor Allen, going forward, is whether or not we're bound to include these bongos in that particular RFP going forward.
Okay. Let's go to Manager Dean and get some comment on those comments, please, Manager Dean.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. Yep, so in terms of the features for the playground, musical features were a component that were stated through the community engagement that that certain members that filled out the survey did want to see accessible features as well as inclusive features. And one of the items that was listed was a musical component. So that was included in the RFP. And as of such, some ideas of types of features could be included in that play structure. So whether they be so kind of similar to the one that Councillor Cabral was speaking of, it's a drum-like shape, a durable plastic, so that durable heavy-duty plastic playground material that has different sensory components on it and has the flat top. So could be a musical feature that children can kind of be innovative and imaginative with and play a drum-like beat or a drum-like noise on. So the goal of this the play structure in the park is really to engage and foster play for residents of all ages, and to also ensure that we include features in that park that can engage the visual, sound, and touch as that are ground level and or up on the play structure, so that it really is an all-inclusive structure that brings out the imagination and the innovative nature of different ages of play. So in my back and forth with Councillor Cabral today, and in some of our conversations, so we can definitely look into what the sound would be for the different features included, and obviously with discussion with council tonight, and with the council approvals to move forward, we want to ensure that the playground is a place for all to enjoy, and that it can really capture the needs of many different ages and abilities.
Okay,
Follow on, Mayor Allen.
go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. And I certainly do appreciate everything that Manager Dean has said. It certainly is desirable to have those types of components in the playground, but initially the playground was really a physical playground, and the idea was to replace the equipment there. But we also have to take into consideration the residents that are living immediately adjacent to the playground. So if it means not having the bongos, but maybe having some other components, that's my main concern, is to strike a balance between children being able to enjoy themselves at the playground and also ensure that the current residents that are living there are not unduly affected by additional noise coming from the playground. It's one thing to have children's laughter and screams and screeches. We get that and we understand that. But when we add features that actually create additional sounds, additional noises, and we can't just make the assumption that it'll be the children are playing there, I can well imagine that after 6 p.m., the younger crowd might get there and decide that they want to beat on the bongos as well. So I just want to be cautious moving forward that we don't forget about the residents who live immediately adjacent to the parkette.
So Manager Dean, how will you go about testing the noise component of these drums and getting some sort of measurement of that?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Allen. What we would do, assuming there is approval to move forward tonight, would reach out to the supplier and confirm what the sound decibels would be of different components that would have, that could potentially have a noise component to it. And based on the Ministry of Environment, background sounds can have up to 60 decibels of noise to be an acceptable level. So that would be similar to the sound that you would hear from a regular dishwasher, or less than that of passing traffic. So that would be something that we would reach out to the supplier to. They should be able to confirm that through different studies they have done on their playground equipment and components.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn. My concern with that is regardless of what the decibels are that are coming from that, it's simply noise. I do know that the residents in the area, even the swinging back and forth, there really isn't a barrier between the park and that. So if there's an alternative option to provide sensory play for our youth that doesn't involve the musical elements, is there an option then for us to either refer this back to staff to come up with a secondary option and just disregard the musical component?
Manager Dean?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Allen, through you to Deputy Mayor and the rest of council. So yes, there's definitely an option that we can work with the supplier to consider all options. I would request that if possible, maybe a friendly amendment be made and it could move forward tonight. As this is a grant for this playground, we do have tight timelines on when we do need to move forward with the equipment to secure that it is funded through the grant. So we would want to ensure we could continue to move forward and work with the approved contractor to look at all options. Again, assuming that it would be approved tonight.
Okay, why don't we do that, Clerk Ainsworth, if you would compose a friendly amendment to incorporate what we've been talking about, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. And aside from the grant that was provided or that was awarded, previously there was a park interruption fee, or when they put the water main line through there. Has that money been utilized or spent on that park already, or is there an opportunity? I understand not through this project, but we're talking about it, so I just wanted to bring it up. Is there an opportunity is that funding still available to provide some sound barrier between the park and the residents?
Manager Dean, would you know that, or do I go to Director Radigan?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I may have deferred to Director Radigan to confirm, but I do not believe that funding has been spent or spent in its entirety.
Director Radigan?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Deputy Mayor Coughlin. No, the funding has not been spent to date at this point.
And the funding is how much, please?
For the grant itself, I believe the grant was $200,000. That I can confirm.
Follow on, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I'm not speaking to the grant. It was a park interruption fee, and I believe it was about $75,000. It was to be allocated by a developer that was running a water line through Homer Barrett. And I was just curious if all of that money has been spent, and it would be a secondary motion. I don't want to complicate this one at all. I do want to see this move forward. But I just, for my own knowledge, to bring forward a notice of motion later. And I see
CEO Schmitz, come on, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Deputy Mayor Coughlin. It's my understanding, Deputy Mayor Coughlin, you're correct, that through negotiations with one of the neighboring developers, they were putting in, I believe it's actually a sanitary sewer line. And in doing so, there was some disruption to that park. And as such, there was compensation paid to the township. I may look to Director Spagnell as to the actual dollar amount. I can't recall the dollar amount. And I don't believe staff has come forward with any recommendations for council to spend those funds. So to my knowledge, those funds are still available. Maybe Director Spagnell can confirm the dollar amount.
Go ahead, Director.
Thank you, Mayor. I can't confirm the dollar amount, but I'm sure we could find that out for council shortly. I just need to look back to some of the files and the terms of the agreement, but there definitely was a dollar amount put towards upgrades for that park. So I can take a quick look and hopefully have that dollar amount back to council shortly.
Okay, Clerk Ainsworth. So a friendly amendment to this to incorporate what we've talked about might be.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I would recommend an actual amendment just because it does change the scope of the project slightly. And I have drafted an amendment to the main motion, that the motion now before council be amended as follows: to add, and that the musical components be replaced with a comparable component that would not make additional noise.
Okay. Mover and seconder, okay with that? Yes, yes. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is carried. That with the main motion, please, Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. The main motion as amended would read that the report from the manager, Recreation Parks and Facilities regarding the award of Homer Barrett Park Playground dated November 2nd, 2022 be received, and that the Homer Barrett Park Playground project be awarded to Park and Play Limited in the amount of $204,330.33, including HST recoveries, and that the funding in the amount of $200,000 be from the Community Build Fund grant, and the remaining $4,330.33 funding come from the Park and Recreation Minor Capital Account, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the resulting agreement, and that the musical components be replaced with a comparable component that would not make additional noise.
Okay, all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to 7.1, information reports, report, mover and seconder to get that on the floor. Deputy Mayor Coghlan, Councillor Moore. Any questions, comments with respect to the Building Services Monthly Activity Report, September 2022? The recommendation is that the report listed herein be received for information. All those in favor? That is carried. Moving on to verbal reports. Director Spagnell, any update on official plan or economic development update?
I have nothing new to report, Mayor Allen. Thank you.
Thank you. General Manager Ramdeo, Midhurst Development update.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor Allen. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I shall begin with the new home construction in the mixed subdivision. We've issued 348 building permits today, and the majority of those are under construction. The first 22 of those homes are nearing completion, and I expect the first occupancy around the second week of December. And that I confirm again earlier today. In preparation for this milestone, the testing and startup of the water plant, that is actually underway, and barring any issues, it should be complete around the 15th of November. I also expect the subdivision access road to Snow Valley to open shortly thereafter. As for the interim wastewater plant, it will only come online when we get to about 100 homes. And that is because the plant itself can't operate with very low flows. It needs a certain volume of flow. Until then, the developer will truck the waste away for treatment somewhere else. Over on the east side of Bayfield, the contractor continues to work on site preparation. And that brings me to the end. Thank you.
Any questions of General Manager Ramdeo? Okay, moving on to county updates. Deputy Mayor Coghlan, any county update?
No update, but our budget begins tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So let the fun begin.
Maybe you just review for council what that purpose of that meeting is and how it does get referred to the next council. Just go
Yeah,
ahead.
so similar to previous on this term, sorry, last term, this term of council at the county level will approve a budget in principle and pass that on to the next council.
Okay, municipal updates. Any municipal updates? Okay, moving on to the notice of motion, 9.1. We have a notice of motion. Councillor Moore and Councillor Hannah. Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much, Mayor Allen. I'm presenting this notice of motion for Councillor Hannah, really. And I think it's a very gracious motion. I think that he's helping our next council and asking for our contracts and service agreements with valuations and recommendations be created and then forwarded to the next council so that they can use that as reference when we are being asked to make decisions. And I think it's really generous to do that. I actually wish somebody had have done that for me when I first started so that I could have used it as a reference. So things that include even our integrity commissioner, for instance, our local newspapers. We're not asking for it to be part of the budget. It's just an information piece to be provided to council members.
Okay.
Look at Mr. Councillor Hannah's on camera. He would
Councillor
like
Hannah.
to speak. I hope you're feeling well.
Councillor Hannah, go ahead.
Thank you. And I was told I had to sign in because apparently some of the public that are watching can't see don't know I'm on here, even though it says on my screen that I'm here, but I'm not on camera. And
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, and thank you, Councillor Moore, for your comments. I agree with you, and I wish that we had have had this in the past. I sometimes think about how much money we actually spend and who we pay to do get rid of our graffiti or fix our traffic lights or those type of things. And obviously, we had a lot of discussion a few months ago about the newspaper, and there was a lot of discussion whether we should be getting also putting stuff from Springwater information into the Barrie Advance. I voted to keep it in Springwater, but in retrospect, I think that it should be some in the paper in the South as well. And I would hope that either this council or the future council considers that. When you look at the Springwater paper and you see the information that Springwater Township puts in, is basically 2 pages. We could cut that down to 1 page and put 1 page in each. And I think that would be a progressive thing going forward. So that would be one of my last positive contributions I'd like to make to this council.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments before we go to Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn. For the Springwater News, we don't have a contract with them. So are we going to include then just the amount that we budget or that we allocate for it? Or are we looking, I'm just not clear because this is speaking to contracted services and there is no media contracts with the municipality. So, and then further to that, because actually, no, that would be a reconsideration. That's fine.
I'll let, go ahead, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you. My understanding is it would require a notice of motion, or I'm sorry, reconsideration of the motion that we passed originally in order to make that adjustment, if somebody wants to make that.
Right. Councillor Moore?
Thank you. I was just going to add then, but this would also include people like Ainley's and Tatum and engineering firms that we use, because that information, isn't always so readily available. I think it would be so beneficial to be part of the list.
Okay. Let me go. Okay, Councillor Ritchie, go ahead.
Carol, I just wanted to mention, Deputy Mayor Coughlin mentioned about a reconsideration. I would like to see a reconsideration, which we talked about earlier regarding the papers. Bring it back again for a reconsideration for a future council to discuss at length and bring it back. Thank you.
Okay. That's something for future council to consider. CAO Schmidt, or Director Radigan, any comments with respect to this exercise?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I would just comment, Mr. Mayor, that I think staff are prepared to provide such a request from Councillor Hannah and Councillor Moore. My understanding is again, it's a list of current contracts that the township is currently engaged in, and essentially providing for expiry dates, if you will. And I think it could be beneficial as well to all, not just council, the public, as well as staff, understanding that some of these contracts that we do have with some of our providers are long-term contracts, and hence through budget discussions, some of those contracts may not be up for discussion, or if they are, obviously there would likely be a cost to get out of some of those contracts. But again, I think it would provide some context to members of council and the public as to who we engage with, and some of the expiry dates that are coming due in the near future.
Okay, so Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I'm just wondering if it might be possible, or if CAO Schmidt, through you, Mayor Allen, to CAO Schmidt, when the report is brought forth, would it also capture dollars to date that have been spent, say in this past calendar year, let's say? To give us an idea, how much we are actually spending for specific services. Certainly on the ones that are maybe 1 or 2 year in length. I mean, obviously, some of them, as you say, could be 5, 10-year contracts that we've already signed on for. But certainly not those, but we should be able to just have a glimpse at backwards to see what it has actually cost township. I think that'd be good for the public to see that as well, so that they kind of know where the dollars are going.
CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Cabral. So, Councillor Cabral, I think the intent was that we would provide a list with what the current value of the contract is that council would have approved. If you would like further details on how much has been spent to date, if council is requesting that, then it is something I guess we could provide. It wasn't something we were necessarily considering, but if that's something that council wishes, then we can do that. But again, the contract value, it's public information for the most part, in the sense that it's come to council. Likely most of these contracts have come to council for your approval anyways. So the contract value, I don't have an issue with. Getting the year to date would be a little bit more work, but that's something we could look at providing as well.
Mayor Allen, I think CAO Schmidt's answered my question sufficiently if he tells us what the awards were. But on those that aren't necessarily contract items per se, if we know what we spend on some of that, for example, print media advertising.
Okay, I don't think we need to make an amendment for that, but that's duly noted. So we have a mover and seconder. I'll read them, or do you want to read the motion, Councillor Moore?
I certainly can. Yep. Whereas the Township of Springwater obtains services from outside agencies through contracts and/or service agreements, and whereas the duration, costs, benefits, service providers, and continued need for such services can change, and whereas council approvals for renewing and/or eliminating contracts should be based on current evaluations, budget forecasting, alternative resources, and management reviews. Be it therefore resolved that in preparation for the 2023 budget, staff prepare a list for the new council of all contracts and service agreements with valuation and recommendations at least 30 days prior to expiration or renewal dates. The review needs to identify potential outsourcing, alternate service providers, especially as services provided by individuals such as local newspapers, integrity commissioners, etc.
Okay, all those in favor? And that is unanimous. Thank you. Any other notices of motion? Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I will be bringing a notice of motion at our next scheduled meeting, which I believe is November 23rd. And I'll be introducing a moratorium on all new gravel mining approvals for Springwater, but that will make us the 20th municipality in the past 7 months to sign on to this moratorium. And it's really a policy proposal where we're looking at creating an independent panel to conduct broad consultations about the gravel mining and where they need to prove a definite need for things like expansions.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to items for future consideration. Any items for future consideration? And we move on to bylaws. There are none. Confirmatory bylaw. Can I have a mover and seconder for the confirmatory bylaw? Councillor Cabral, Deputy Mayor Coghlan. That bylaw 2022-083 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on November 2nd, 2022, listed herein, be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? That is carried. So this concludes our meetings for this term. I would like to thank staff for their hard work and great effort and accomplishments over the challenging last 4 years. I wish the new council all the best in the 4 years ahead. And for those not returning to council, I wish you all the best. Can I have a mover and seconder to adjourn the meeting? Councillor Ma Chapman, Deputy Mayor Coghlan. That the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 7 p.m. to meet again in the regular meeting on November 23rd, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? That is carried. Councillor Hannah?
Thank you. I know there's a hospitality, whatever you want to call it, to say goodbye to the rest of the council and staff. I will not be able to attend it, so I just wanted to take this opportunity as well to echo what you said, Don Allen. I think I wish everybody good luck, and I got to tell you, being on council for 12 years is probably the biggest pain in my butt I've ever had, but I think it was productive, and I wish everybody the best. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, Councillor Hannah. Hope you're feeling better.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks.